Hello, welcome to Miniature Elves. My name's Stuart. I've just received a little box in the post from Paul Sawyer at Warlord Games. I was looking at their social media over the weekend and saw a couple of YouTube shorts for the new Warlord Resin Plus, which to me looks like an improved Sirecast mix. So I sent him an email and very cheekily said, would you mind sending me a couple to review? I'd love to have a closer look at it. And he did. He got them in the post next day. So let's take a little look and see what they're all about. So this is the Warlord community page. If you haven't come across it before, it's well worth checking out the articles on there. It tends to provide a little bit of information ahead of new releases and things. And if you're subscribed to the newsletter, you get links to posts in here quite often. So this is what Warlord Games have said themselves in their own community post. So introducing Warlord Resin Plus TM, so trademark. That's interesting because if it is a form of Sirecast, I'm guessing they're able to trademark their own mix. So Sirecast is a Spanish company, but they provide machines and support to lots and lots of different war games companies. So I can only imagine that they work with them to produce their own mix, and then they can, trademark. I may be wrong. This may not be Sirecast. I can't imagine it's not, having recently been to the factory and told about how great the machines are and how much flexibility it gives them, and it very much feels like the future. So I'm going to make a massive assumption, but I think I'm right that this is just a formulation of Sirecast. We've been working hard at perfecting Warlord Resin, and we're incredibly excited to reveal the fruits of our labours, Warlord Resin Plus. This new formulation differs from the current Warlord Resin in a number of ways, and we're so satisfied with it that for our first time we're producing miniatures for our most popular game system, Bolt Action, in Warlord Resin Plus. So what is Warlord Resin Plus? It's a brand new variation of the existing Warlord Resin, so that pretty much confirms it is Sirecast, which brings us significant advantages over the traditional metal figures. Feels like hard plastic, but better. Less flexible than its predecessor, Warlord Resin Plus retains a feel of hard plastic, but has a level of springiness that leads to excellent durability. Easy to work with. Warlord Resin Plus can be filed, clipped, scraped, and cut just as easily as metal, and requires only one simple dab of super glue for assembly. Lighter than metal, no more sore arms or backs for enormously heavy figure cases. Enhanced surface quality. Fine details are crisper than ever before, and paint adheres far better on metal figures. No need to prime or varnish. This is interesting. Simply apply paint directly over the model, and the new formula eliminates the need for priming and ensures a more durable result. Non-toxic, unlike traditional resin and metal miniatures, Warlord Resin Plus has been specifically developed with a non-toxic formula. So that's really, really interesting. Especially as from a parent and you have children younger and younger these days that want to take part in the hobby, having something that is pretty safe is pretty good. I remember when I first started and there was a lot of lead still in models, and you very much wash your hands, but don't put your hands to your face and mouth and that kind of stuff, and things are moving on. Zero waste resin as well. In-house production of Warlord Resin Plus uses the waste reclamation system to ensure that no resin is thrown away during the manufacturing. So this is all good stuff. I know some people will be skeptical about that kind of stuff, but it appeals to me. That sounds pretty good. The most important thing is, how do they stand up? And if you've come across Sirecast before, are they easy to clean up? Because I think that's the difference for me. If they're easy to clean up and you can remove the mold lines and file them as you would a metal or a plastic miniature, then it's going to be win. If you don't need metal miniatures because of that, then again, for me, that's going to be a win. I appreciate that a lot of people love metal miniatures. Then this won't change your mind, I imagine. But for me, it's all about, can they be filed and can they be cleaned up? And if they can, then brilliant stuff, fantastic. We might have a solution to the issue that was this slightly bendy, hard to clean up Sirecast material. And Paul's got his own little quotes on there talking a little bit about it. I know when I was chatting to him on my visit, he told me that he loved normal resin, proper pure resin miniatures, and I'm a big fan of it as well. But I think a lot of people get turned off the idea of resin because of the cheaper rubbery Sirecast examples. So let's have a look in the box. I popped the box open just to check what was in there the other day, but I haven't actually opened it up. I really wanted to do this on camera, so to speak, to get my genuine reaction to it. So we know all about what the idea is, what the plan is around this, and let's see if they stand up. So what I believe these are, based on the email that Paul sent me, are as yet unreleased Italian Bersaglieri weapons teams, so mortar, sniper and anti-tank. I think there were images used of these in one of the latest newsletters, so let's have a closer look. Well, my first impressions are that they look slightly different in colour, but not enough to really stand out had I not been informed that these were a new type of mix. You've still got some flex to the ends of the guns, but the actual bodies of the troops themselves feel pretty solid. You've probably got a little bit more flex you might have with a injection molded plastic, but you know, flex is a good thing there. As far as I'm concerned, it means it's not likely to break. So let's have a look. How do they react? So we've got a couple of extra bits on a gate here. So let's see how well they trim off. So they're really easy to clip off. And how well do bits file? This is the really important parts to me. So they're fairly clean anyway. But let's see how well they tidy up. So we've got little marks on the top of the helmet here. Now with the existing Siocast, this would be a pain. I'll be scrubbing away and you'd be left with a kind of a mealy finish, a bit like when you've been rubbing out on paper if you haven't come across it before. And it's, you find as much as you file, you can't quite get a smooth finish. You end up with this kind of debris left over. Now I'm brushing away on my thumb and it does appear to be disappearing. So that is a difference, a big difference compared to the previous sidecast that I've had from not only Warlord Games but from other companies. So that's huge for me. That was the biggest problem with it, by far the biggest problem with it. So we got little mold lines around the edge of the trousers here. Let's see if it comes off of the edge of a blade like it normally would without leaving a mess. Yeah, that's pretty good as well. And there's not too much to clean up on these, if I'm honest with you. These are good. Quality of the detail is fantastic. So moving away from just the material itself, quality details is fantastic. These are obviously new unreleased miniatures, so expect new sculpts to be top notch as well. It's great, to be honest with you. If this is it, if this is not just a really good example of it, if this is what we're expecting, what we can expect from the new formula of Warlord Resin or Sidecast, or whatever you want to call it, that's great, and that no longer becomes a problem for me, no longer becomes an issue in terms of, sorry, shaking the camera around there, no longer becomes an issue of, oh, well, do I really want to spend the time cleaning up those miniatures? They're going to be a nightmare. Some things are better than others. Organic shapes are harder. The thought of doing cavalry in 28mm in the older resin would probably put me off. Anything with lots of fine detail that is hard to clean up. But these, yeah, if this is an example of it, it's pretty good. So what I'll do now is I'll spend a little bit of time cleaning these up and assembling them, and then we'll try out the painting without a primer thing and see how that goes. So I've cleaned them all up now. So I'm going to give you a few more thoughts on the cleanup process and the change in the material. Now, it's a vast improvement on what came before, absolutely. There is still obviously the flexible nature of the Siocast resin, and I find that it cleans up very well on the smoother flat surfaces. You do still get a bit of that kind of mealy nature at some points when you file. I find that afterwards it's easier to clean up with a blade, but they're not perfect. They're absolutely not perfect. This isn't a case of these are now as easy to clean up as a metal miniature. I say is easy. We have to bear in mind, put this in context here. A metal miniature with a mold line right down the face, or a really hard, thick bit of metal flash to remove, isn't easy to do either. I think the only difference here is when you file with metal, you will generally end up with a smooth finish. Here, you have to work a little bit harder than that, but it is a huge improvement on what came before. And it's really a kind of a balance off, I suppose, versus what your expectations are and what you're happy with, and what you like to game with. I'm not a massive fan, Mr. Moldline there, but I'm not a massive fan of metal miniatures for gaming. I do find they chip. I know a lot of people absolutely love them, and you know, there doesn't need to be a debate there. There will be metal miniatures for some and not for others. Warlord Games looks like they're moving over to this kind of formula, and I imagine we will see this replace metal miniatures more and more. If I could choose between metals and these, it's getting to the point now where I would probably choose these because of the lighter miniature and the fact that it'd be easier to convert over a metal miniature, no need to pin, etc. There is a balance off, there is a trade-off there with how smooth you can get the finish, but this new formulation is a significant improvement on where we were before, but it's not perfect. I'm not going to lie to you and say that you don't still get some slight sort of mealy, bumpy nature when you file, but you can file now where it was almost impossible at times to before, and if you work harder you can get a pretty decent finish. And these aren't primed yet as well, so priming will smooth that out. Now they've obviously said you don't have to prime, so maybe you'll find that priming is beneficial just to give a little bit of a coat to smooth out any bits. But let's test out now how well they take paint directly over the top of the bare resin. So I'm using some model colour German green brown. I reached for the closest approximation within reach of the kind of colour that you might have expected to see. I know this may well not be the colour you go for. I've got quite a lot on an old brush really. I'm just going to stick it on the model and see if the paint goes on smooth enough. And you know what, it appears to be. And those of you who like to paint over grey prime, this may well save you time. Now I'm a huge user of zenithal pre-highlights and glazes and things, so this wouldn't be my normal painting method. So even though you don't need to prime, I'm likely to still prime, but that's totally up to you. But the paint just, the paint goes on. It's quite clear the paint goes on. So some final thoughts for you in conclusion. I'm just going to be repeating myself, which you should do in conclusion anyway. They are a vast improvement. It is a firmer formulation, and you can definitely file much easier, especially over the smoother areas like the tops of helmets and things like that. A massive, massive difference. In terms of some of the more awkward areas, like the wraps of the gaiter wraps at the bottom of the trousers, please in the comments, whoever knows a bit about the Italian army, you tell me exactly what they're called, but you know what I'm getting at. Those bits are slightly trickier. I imagine if there was a mold line on the face or something like that, that would be tricky, but we've got to remember that would be tricky on a metal miniature as well. And the same on those areas on a metal miniature, smoothing to get them flat, you might need to do it to a point where you do remove detail. So these things aren't perfect. But a mixture of filing and using the blade, you can definitely do it and definitely get them much smoother than before. As I said, it was a little bit more mealy around the feet on these miniatures than I would like, but overall I would be happy if my miniatures came in this material over metal for wargaming purposes. A quick note on the kits rather than the actual material, which is what this is focused on. They're really nice actually, very, very cool. At some point I need a faction to take on my 8th army, my unfinished 8th army project, and I think Italians will be it. So these will definitely be used in that, and I'll be very happy to use them in that. They're cool looking little sculpts. Now I don't know anything about the Italian army in the Second World War really, at least not on a kind of a uniform detail level, more that kind of world view, top-down historical view, rather than that. So those of you who are more of a military expert at this level will know whether the miniatures uniforms are correct and things like that, and I'm sure there'll be some comments if they're not, but I quite like them, and I think they're nice looking sculpts and look like nice additions to the range. thanks very much for watching the video. Hopefully you found it useful. Hopefully you can see that it's a balanced review. I do think there's an improvement, and there's something as wargamers we've got to put up with this material. It isn't going away, so the best thing we can do is keep feeding back and putting pressure on companies to improve, and it looks like that's what's happening. They're not perfect yet, but they are much better, and I'll look forward to following the progress of the material and how well it's received and how well it works on different kinds of miniatures and things like that as well. If you are new to the channel, please do check out the other videos. There's lots of Warlord Games related items on there, so lots of epic battles, American Civil War and Napoleonic. There's some bolt action as well with some progress on my British 8th Army, including some painting tutorials, so go and check those out, and lots of other bits as well. So thank you very much for watching, take care, and I'll catch you soon.